the color green and how to mix it and how to use it in a painting. One of the hardest colors to have to deal with in nature is green. And I think it's because there just are so many of them. If you tried to mix them all, you would never, you could never mix all the greens that exist. The color can be affected by so many things, by the light, by the altitude of where you are. You could be at the beach, you could be up at the mountains. By the atmosphere, it could be a cool day, it could be a warm day, rainy, sunny, sunset, sunrise. You know, you could go on and on forever with what makes green so hard to mix. As you can see, I've chosen a very green landscape from up in the mountains here in Colorado, and I would like to paint this and show you how I go about choosing the greens that I need to put in this painting and also what I use to mix them. Basically, it is a scene of a distant mountain, which is on the bluish side, coming forward into some trees and then some shrubbery and scrub brush in the foreground. And if you will notice in the background here, and I'll point to it, these trees are the same trees as these, but because of the aerial perspective and the atmosphere, they appear bluer. As you come forward, they get warmer and have more yellow in the green. What I would like to do is just start painting this and showing you how I go about handling these greens. First of all, you have to take some time to look at your painting and identify what these greens are before you start painting. The photograph has distorted the greens, I guess you could say, in the way the camera picks up the light. You'll notice that all these trees here in the foreground are dark. Even this tree here, which is closer to me, is as dark as what these trees are back here. You know, the same color. So it just kind of all goes together. Well, I want this group of trees to stand out in front of this group of trees. So I'm going to have to handle the colors in this differently. So I have to, in looking at this, decide what colors I'm going to use before I start. If I just start painting, I'm going to confuse myself. So I will start with this part and change those colors. And then I'll move back here, move forward, and then come down to the foreground. You'll notice that all of the scrub in the foreground is sort of light sagey greens, a few yellow greens, some oranges in there, and some violets in there. And I'm going to use all those colors to mix up my greens. So, and then if you look back here, you'll notice that this is the same value and color as this. Well, I think what I would like to do is have this sit back. I don't want it fighting with what's in the front here, so I'm going to have to tone that down and get it probably a little bluer. All right, so I think it's time to start this painting. Okay, let me hold my palette up and identify the greens that I have in my palette. This is a green gold. This is an olive green, and this is a viridian. This is compost green, which is a Holbein color, and it has a little white in it. But I love that color for painting the sage, chamisa, the western landscape, and a lot of the scrub in the western landscape. It works perfectly when I mix it with other colors and also when I use it by itself. So you'll see me using that quite a bit in this painting. So let's get started. As you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but I have drawn my a sketch on here as to where I want everything to be. So I'm going to start with a nice Let's start with green gold. I don't necessarily have to stay within my lines. Okay, so I'm going to use green gold and I'll put a little orange in it. Now a lot of this I like to paint nice and wet, and if I add other colors in there, I like to keep them more wet than letting them all dry and then putting another layer on. I find that the tree is more believable when I paint it this way. So I'll just kind of bring that in there. I'll pick up some cobalt blue, and I'm going to put that in there. Just kind of brush it in. Go back to my green gold. Be a little yellow. You might be thinking these trees are going to be too light, but they're not. With watercolor, you want to start off light anyhow, and then you can add your darks as you go along. So I'm gonna come down here with some more blue as I move down to the bottom of this tree. I try to use my brush strokes in the way that I think the branches are growing. Okay, so let's add some not cobalt, but ultramarine. And some olive green. I'm going to get a little darker green in here. I want to kind of keep it on the warm side. And I want to keep in mind where the light is hitting this tree and where it would be creating shadows. And I look at that and I go, oh, well, I probably should have left a little more light in here. Well, if I really press down on my brush and I put some green gold on my brush and I press back in here, I can move that paint around a little bit. Kind of figuring out where the light is hitting this tree. I don't want to overdo this because then I'll mess my paper up. Okay, so let's kind of get some more blue. Okay, and then this bush here in the foreground, right here, tends to have a little blue in it. So I'm going to pick up my compost green. I'm going to add some green gold to it, and I'm going to add this color in here. pressing down with my brush, lifting. And then back here is another tree that I have. There's a tree back here. So I'm going to paint that like a light bluish green. So I'm going to mix cobalt with my green gold. I'm going to keep it real light. Throw a little bit more blue in there. Okay, and while I'm at it, I'll just throw in a little bit so I can anchor this a little bit down in here with compost. I'll throw a little yellow in there too. I like to connect things to the edges. So rather than have this float in the middle, I'm gonna make sure that as I paint this that I keep connecting it over there. Okay, so all right, so we have that fairly light. Let's pick up some ultramarine and some olive green. Just going to add a few more marks in here that are darker. Okay, and then I want to add a little. Let's go with a little of my burnt sienna and violet, and then tone that down and water it a little bit so that not so black. And I'm going to bring a few little marks in here. That look like the trunk of this tree. Let's add some olive green to that violet mixture. Get some darks in here. I'm not going to get too crazy yet, because what I want to do is get these darks in here, and then I'll know how dark I need to go there. But in the meantime, I'll pick up my rigger here. And let's just put a few little branches in. So I know where I'm going. Okay, so we did that. We can add a little bit over here. Okay. So I have the general color in here. If I add more in on it, I can do that later after I see how it fits into the rest of the landscape. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is take my Gray of Grays, which is another Holbein color with a little white in it. I can add a little blue to it as I'm painting. Let it kind of blend together. my sky color. I don't want my sky to be too light. Because that, in the photograph it looks white, but here in the painting I want it darker so that my brights and lights jump forward when I'm finished painting this. A little bit of that. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to take my cobalt blue just a tint of maybe, okay, here's my cobalt blue. I think I might have some gray of gray still on my brush, so it's kind of blending into this color. And I'm going to bring that across. All right, so now I'm going to take that same cobalt blue and I'm going to add my olive green to it. And I'm going to paint these trees. Up here in the distance. All right. Add more water as I come this way because it's looking a little dark. So, okay, now I have to paint around my trees. Actually, I need to get a little of that in there. And then what I'm going to do now is paint this blue-green. I'm going to use I'll probably use my compost green and put a little blue in it so that I get this bluish green. It's not going to show on my painting as much as it shows here. I've made that little strip a little thinner. I pushed my trees up higher. Okay, so we have to paint around this. Okay, that sort of takes care of that. Let's get a little closer there. Okay. This kind of bled up there a little bit, but it really doesn't matter. Okay, so we've kind of worked our way down here a little bit into the scene. We have the, these are still standing out in front of this. If I want, I can always, bring that little bit up there just by taking some water on my brush and going like that. I end up with the tree back up going back up into the landscape here and not stopping right there at that line. Okay, so now let's get these dark trees in. I think this is going to be one of the hardest parts. So what we're going to do is take ultramarine blue, a little olive green, just to start off. Pretty good saturation of it. This is still not dark enough, but we're going to start off this way. Let me get some more blue in there. And I'm going to start adding these dark trees. Now I don't want them to look just like a silhouette, so I want to add other colors in here. So besides that blue, I could bring some cobalt back in there. When I come up to this tree, I have to, again, do some negative painting. Okay, I'm going to pick up some violet and mix it with my viridian. So I get a little variety of darks in there. Okay, so I'll come over here. I have mostly viridian on my brush right now, so I'm going to add some ultramarine to that. All right, if you don't get the branches exactly right, you know, when I'm painting into them, I can always change that later. Right now, I'm going to try to work as quickly as I can. Going back in here, I'm still using a lot of ultramarine blue. I want these trees all looking like they have the same point on them, so I have to be real careful. Trees in the wild do not all come to a point on top. Some of them have a flatter top or more bushy. All right, you can see the blue showing through here. I'm going to pick up some more green, viridian. Like I said, I want to try and make them look a little, give them a little variety here and make them look a little different from each other. There's a little bit, you know, the paint is pretty heavy on my brush. It's not real watery, so it stays right where I put it and create some of these wispy marks that could be like the branches of some of these trees. Okay, so keep going. Bring my blue, which is the ultramarine, back in there, along with these greens. Get a little greener over here. change the color to the Viridian with a little olive in it. Because I don't want that bright olive, or I mean Viridian green standing out in my painting. So it's a very unnatural color. So I need to mix it with some of this olive green. Okay, I'll go back to the blue, little ultramarine blue, and I want some of that in here. It's like painting another tree on top of these trees so that it kind of sits in front. It won't be, it won't stand out a whole lot. It'll just be subtle enough that when you look at the painting, you'll be able to see it. See, I'm getting that bluer over here too. Keep my edge uneven. There's some bushes in front of these trees. So I'm keeping it on a cool, them all kind of cool in here. Let me now get some violet. Mix it with that Viridian. And I can even bring a few darker tree shapes here, back in here. So this is pretty dark back here. Okay, so now as you can see, these kind of really stand out in front of these. And you'll notice I did not go around and paint each tree and paint each one with the light side and a dark side. I just painted them as this group of trees back there. I didn't want to put anything that would be fighting with this group of trees here. So far we've used quite a variety of greens. We have a blue-green back here. We have a lighter blue-green in here. I probably will have to tone that even further. I want to add some trees back in there anyhow. And then as we come down here, we have yellow greens. We have this sagey blue-green in here. We have a yellow-green here, a little more yellow added to it here. So lots of greens. Okay, so now let's just, whoop. Okay, I'm going to pick up my compost green. And you'll notice as I come up close to the trees, some of the violet that's up in here is running down into it. I kind of like that, so I'm going to leave it. Okay, so now I'm going to go and get some more of the yellow-green. Kind of bring that along back there. There's violet in that too. And again, I'll take my compost green and come over here and go up into these trees. And as I push up into them, I'm picking up some violet. Moving it over that way so that I kind of make my horizon line here with the trees have a little bit of a variety. It goes up, there's a bush over here, I've decided to use it, and by just doing that, I've kind of put that in. I have these over here, and then a little yellow-green over here. So I need clean water. All right, don't be afraid to stop every once in a while and get some clean water. All right, especially if you're going to be painting lighter areas. All right, so now I'm going to, again, now that I have clean water, I can get some clean color here. This is compost green. And I'm going to bring it against this yellow green over here. I don't want to put yellow green back behind here when I have all this yellow green in the foreground here. I'll just drag that across there with a lot of water in my brush because I want it lighter than that. All right, another thing I can do right now is just take a little violet. I'll mix it with my gray of grays. And I'm going to add that in here, keeping it light. It kind of has that look to that area in there, so. And then there seems to be a little down here. It'll break up all these greens also, so that everything doesn't, get so heavy with greens. So I'll bring some of that in there. Just a little contrasty. Okay, some more. I kind of see it down in some of these other areas, so I'm just gonna kind of splash it around here and there. It's light enough that I can throw another color on top if I need to. So I'll bring that down. Let's bring it all the way down here to this area here so that it kind of flows through there. Okay. All right, so now that I've done that, I'm going to go back to my compost green again. And with a lot of water, and you'll see some of this yellow green from up above will run down into it, especially since I'm painting upright. If you're painting flat, this might not happen. And I am going to bring this color of this bush, blend it into this violet a little bit down in here. So I'm just kind of following that. So, and as I come over this way, I'm also holding my brush like this and kind of moving the paint around. Because I can push on the brush and then pull down on it. Okay, so we have this. Keep going with the same compost green with white, not white, but water in it. Okay, so let's pick up a little green gold with a little orange in it. And a pretty watery mixture of it. Put it in there. Okay. And I think I'd like it shows right here. There's some of that orange. Right there. And then I'm going to take more water, put more water in it, and bring it over here. We want it to balance out into the painting, so we don't want to just have one spot of it somewhere. So a little orange mixed into that green right there. A little more green gold. Okay, I took a little of that green gold and pushed it over toward the blue-green mixture that's on my palette here, and just kind of let it blend a little bit together there. Okay, so throw some paint in there, and then I took some water and let it blend up into that color. Let's take some of this and put it over here too. Paint it over top of that violet a little bit, and then go back and pick up some compost. Okay, so we're kind of getting our basic colors down in here, but we still have to cover that a little bit. So why don't we just take a little burnt sienna, mix it with a little violet. Keeping it light. Had a little too much paint on my brush over here, but it'll dry lighter. All right, so we've covered the whole thing with different colors or different mixtures of green, along with some violet, and the violet has a little green in it too. So all kinds of varieties of green, light sagey green, warm green gold, olive greens, blue greens, dark blue greens, and it's, and everything seems to be working right now. So now we need to just kind of finish off with all the little bits of interest that are in the grasses and bushes to pull this whole thing together. Okay, so I need to probably pick up some olive green with a little, let's put a little burnt sienna in it. I'm going to come down in here a little bit with that, thinking about how this bush grows. I think I'm going to add a little violet to that. Here it shows it as black. I really don't want it to be black. So I'm going to start off with this lighter tone of a little burnt sienna a little violet. And I'm thinking about the shape and how this bush grows. So that's why you see me making these kinds of marks. I'll turn my brush sideways, I'll use it flat. Okay, so we're going to start using more violet. We can mix it with some greens. For back here, I'll mix it with a little green, olive green. All right, so that's pretty dark. I don't want it that dark, so I'm going to add more water. As I'm painting this, I have to be thinking about the top of this bush too. Not the easiest thing to do. Okay, so a lot of times when you do something like that, you go, it's too straight. I wanted it to be a different shape. You can always take, like, I'm going to take my green gold, which I started off with in here, and I'm going to put it on my brush, and my brush is watery enough. I'm going to bring it down and kind of pull it through this color, this bush, and get that edge not to be so hard all the way across. Be more like that. Okay. Now, at this point, I'm going to be just kind of going here and there and figuring out where I need a lot of these little marks. It's hard to just kind of say, okay, now it's hard to just think about it as just being like a formula. We paint this area, we paint this area, we paint this area all separately. Well, we don't. What I have to do is be painting all over the painting at the same time. If I put this mark here, I might need something over there. If I make it darker here, I might see that I need another dark somewhere else. But I have to keep balancing it. And so at this point, I just keep adding my marks. And a lot of them are just these small dabs. I'll go back down here and maybe pick up another dark, because I want this little area to stand out. Or I want to cut into that bush and give it a little more character. Or I might want to add a little blue-green. Back in here. Okay, I kind of covered up that branch. Well, let's pull that back out. I'm going to get water on my brush and just kind of push it. Over there. So, okay. All right. Little blue-green down here. Let's separate this from this. Okay, and then maybe add a little more composed green in there to fill that out a little bit. Maybe up here. Bring the violet. Mixture that I had down here with the gray of grays and a little violet. Coming up this way a little bit. I'm just kind of feeling my way around through this, just watching what happens as I put different colors on. You'll notice that I didn't put the rocks in. There was no reason to. They didn't add anything to the painting, so I have decided they aren't necessary. Maybe this a little darker in here. So just kind of building up the bushes that are here in the foreground. I'm going to add some little marks with my rigger in a little while here. See, I need another little piece up there. That will kind of make these look more natural. So just keep adding them. I'm using that violet to make sure there's a little bit of green in it, but it has gray of grays and my dioxazine violet. Let's push that up that way a little bit more. Okay, it's coming together. I have this green, darker green over here. Let's see. Let's just put a little in there. which is compost actually, just so as I fill this in, it's looking brushier, more like plants, a little more green gold over here. Okay, so let's take the rigger now. And one of the things I'd like to do, and I suppose I could have just used a little biscuit or masking fluid here. I'm going to put, there's a white branch here. There's several of them actually. Sort of these dead branches sticking out here. And I'm just going to kind of lay them in there. Okay, so maybe a little bit over there. And in this dark area down here, we'll do some too. Okay, now I'm going to take the burnt sienna, maybe just a little violet in it, but mostly burnt sienna. And what I want to do is now add some of these in the little branches. And what happens is all of a sudden everything starts taking on some volume when I do this. And it tells me, you know, that this is a bush sitting here. Now right here, you see all this paint together? Let's take a little of that violet. Let's not get too dark with it yet. So I'll add water to it. And down in here, I'm going to add all these little branches. This one in the foreground. The trick with this is knowing when to stop, or how many you need, or how dark they need to be, which direction you want to make them go to enhance your center of interest. I'm going to be using quite a few of these in this scene because it's all rugged and ragged. It has a lot of this brush in this scene, and I'm not getting too dark here yet. You can see it's lighter. I will put some darker ones in eventually. Get a few little twigs in there. Let's balance it out over here a little bit. Maybe right in here. Okay, so this is the top of some grasses and bushes, so I don't necessarily want to come down into that area, but I do want to paint from the edge of it out so that it looks like this is the edge or the top of it, and then behind it are some of these twigs. Okay, we're getting pretty close to being done. Let's do a little darker. Let's use the violet with the burnt sienna and almost like as dark as we can get it. Okay. Maybe here and there a few of these, especially down here in the front. We don't want them all coming out of the same spot either. Okay, so now we can probably add a few of these to the tree area. Like I said, no one to stop. So let's okay. Pretty much done. Oh, I know what I wanted to do was add a few trees back in here that looked like they were on the mountainside. Or so I'll take my brush and kind of make these little groups. I have some blue-green. Get back in here a little bit. I'm not sure I like this line in here, just a small line, but always just move it a little bit. Okay, so one of the other things I have to look at right now is this area. It's as light as this area. So let's take a little blue, green that's on my palette. Let's just tone that just a little bit so it sits back there. Okay. All right, so I like to go around and touch things up a bit. That's pretty much it. All right. But anyhow, what this does show you is that there are a lot of greens, especially in a mountain landscape, and you have to figure out how to put those greens together in your painting to make it look like a natural setting. All right, I took the tape off and kind of gave it a nice clean edge, and you can now see a few of the little touch-ups I put in that I didn't do while I was doing the demo. And they're just minor little things, a few little twigs here and there. I kind of made the tree, I gave it a little more color. And, you know, added, I took that same color actually and added it over here because I liked, and here, so I like that kind of woven throughout the landscape in the back there. I think it added just another touch or another layer to the painting that gave it a little more interest. So anyhow, there's the finished painting.